60% mental and 40% physical.
Math was never our strong suit, but breaking down Ohio State football is. Sit back and join us for Buckeye Grove Instant Access, part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network.
You can do it!
Brought to you by BuckeyeGrove.com. Post-game thoughts, immediate analysis, and much, much more to put the big game into perspective. Without any further delay of game, here's your host, Kevin Noon.
Kevin, goddammit.
Hey, welcome to the BIA podcast. I am your host, Kevin Noon, and as always, I am joined with Braden Moles and Keaton Maisano here on the end of a day where the Buckeyes rolled the Terps 73-14 in a game without Chase Young, but I don't think anybody expected that to be much of a concern in terms of this game. The Buckeyes came out, took care of business, put up 21 points in 3 of the 4 quarters. Good opportunity to get a lot of the backups in, whatnot. A pretty thorough win. Definitely some little things to go over. Too many penalties, some mistakes with that, but all in all, a good day.
It's looked easy for Ohio State pretty much every game this season, but I don't know if it has looked easier than it did against Maryland. They basically had the same amazing production they had against Miami of Ohio without, the safety at the beginning of that game and, giving up the field goal and, any of the major mistakes that were given up were mostly when the second team defense had gone in. So same on offense when Chris Chugunov came in and fumbled the ball. So I think, the first team worked basically flawlessly today.
Yeah, and in following up the performance against Wisconsin and to have this just kind of shows the focus that Ryan Day keeps stressing that this team needs to have in order to go and reach the goals that they have set for themselves. And just the focus in playing flawless ball really to start kind of got a little sloppy when the second stringers got in. But offensively, they hummed along. I thought Justin Fields looked very good. Threw the ball 25 times in the first half, which Ryan Day said was a lot, but the mindset was to be aggressive today. They showed that off with the onside kick that I think caught a lot of people by surprise. Obviously caught Maryland by surprise, but yeah, I think that Ryan Day really set the tone that this team's going to be aggressive. They're not going to back down to people, and they just want to keep the foot on the gas pedal so that they don't let up and have any kind of shaky performances that would look bad at national perception.
Just earlier this week, Mark Gibler and myself did a podcast on the loss of Chase Young, and we'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute. But staying with the theme of the game, Ohio State threw for 322, ran for 383. Maryland ran for 62, passed for 77. Honestly, when you look at everything, Ohio State gave up more in penalty yards than what Maryland really was able to do in terms of offense. I'm trying to look for the numbers. 139 in terms of total offense, and then when it comes to penalties, looking for that.
I believe it was 141.
There you go. So obviously some concerns there. They had 3 successive plays with major penalties that led to Maryland's first touchdown drive. But let's focus on the positive. Justin Fields, very efficient today, 16 to 25, 200 yards as mentioned, 3 touchdowns. He also was able to run the ball pretty well when that was the question there, had a touchdown as well. Just overall offensive thoughts.
I think, Justin Fields, he's kind of become the cornerstone of this offense, I think, in the sense that, the 25 attempts, 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, anywhere between 16 and 20 completions per game. That's basically been his numbers in every single game this season, and he continued that this week. And then, in turn, they ran the ball as good as they have all season today. I believe four rushers all getting over 70 yards today, even DeMario McCall getting in on the action with 7 carries for 78 yards, and I believe four rushers found the end zone, 5 if you include Fields. So overall, just a really efficient day for the offense, and they kind of showed everything from, Fields being efficient to the rushing game to, receivers like Olave and Garrett Wilson making plays, kind of showed every aspect of why they've been so good this season.
Yeah, and with Fields, sacked 0 times, first time this season that he's stayed off the ground. So that was, I think, really good growth from the offensive line. And especially in games like this, you don't want to see your quarterback take a lot of hits. So did a very good job in that sense. And then with the 200 yards, 16 for 25, I think that really speaks to how good of the receiving core is for this team. Chris Olave looked as smooth as ever for 43 yards and a touchdown. And then Garrett Wilson really looked strong, and he had a touchdown taken back on one of the best throws and catches we've seen this year between him and Chugunov. But, yeah, the offense just continues to hum along. I think it gets swept under the rug, if you can say that. That might be a little bit of hyperbole because of how well the defense has been playing with Chase Young and his performances. But this offense is as strong as ever. It's very balanced, and they showed it again against Maryland.
And then on the defensive side, I think everybody knew going into this game, and even before some of that news came out, that this was an offensive line that struggled and that they probably would be in trouble. And then Chase Young not going to be in the lineup. People wondered maybe where that pass rush was going to come from. Well, 7 sacks, 11 TFLs. When you have Tyreek Smith with a pair, Devon Hamilton with a pair, and then Malik Harrison, Tuff Borland, and Zach Harrison all with a sack themselves. I don't think the defensive line really missed a beat. I mean, you're not going to be able to necessarily say that as the season progresses. I mean, we'll take Rutgers off the table, but, Ohio State's going to definitely miss Chase Young in some bigger games if he's not back at that point. But, a really strong effort so far.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin kind of echoed most of my thoughts. So when you look at how long Chase Young may be out, and even Jonathan Cooper, who's still healing from injuries, we don't know how long he'll be out. You look at, as we get further into the season, against Penn State, Michigan, Big Ten championship game, against apparently Minnesota, possibly. But when you start getting into those games, you'll see the impact of not having Young and Cooper on the field. But today against Maryland, if you had someone who had never watched Ohio State football before, you showed them the Wisconsin game, then the Maryland game, they think there wasn't a single thing that changed on the defense. I mean, it wasn't really noticeable that they didn't have Young out there because Devon Hamilton had a dominant game. Tyreek Smith was out there as well. Zach Harrison had a nice start today. So overall, like Kevin said, it really didn't seem like they missed a beat out there.
Yeah, and it's Ohio State defensive line. We know there's talent there. I think they really proved that they're resilient. And in the face of adversity, Ryan Day said that they really showed their character today, and they stepped up into the roles. A lot of guys played elevated roles today. And I think this defense is also very creative in how they're going to get their pressure. When you have a guy like Chase Young, that's something that a team has to totally scheme for, so that can open up spots for other people. But with his absence, I think the defensive coordinators really did a good job of thinking of creative ways to get pressure. I mean, Devon Hamilton up the middle, if you get pressure up the middle, I don't know how you're going to get any offense going, and that was a good surprise for Ohio State. And then using the linebackers to get pressure as well was a good wrinkle for this team. So I think they'll adjust if they can't get Young back, but definitely in the bigger games, you want a game wrecker like Chase Young to be able to make the difference, but Ohio State will be able to survive either way if they don't get him back or not.
One number I wanted to throw out there, too, Anthony McFarland last year at Maryland ran for close to 300 yards on these guys. This game, 6 carries, 7 yards, a long of 9. So certainly the Buckeyes did a really good job of clamping down on him. Maryland really did not have any answers. Tried to get the ball to the outside, that didn't work. Tried to do some interior stuff, that didn't work. Really their best play was Ohio State's penalties, some lack of discipline, especially with the 2s and 3s as mentioned. We'll turn the page, talk a little bit more big picture, and of course the other big game in the Big Ten here on the other side of this break. Egg Water Conditioning has been treating well in city water in Central Ohio with American-made water filtration products for over 60 years. Have a water quality problem? The water treatment experts at Hague know how to solve it. Not sure if your water softener is working? They will test, inspect, and sanitize any brand of water softener for only $20. Schedule a system checkup or water test today by calling 614-836-2195 or visit them online at HagueH2O.com. That's HAGUE H2O.com. Hey, welcome back to the BIA podcast here with Braden and Keaton here at Ohio Stadium. I'm, of course, your host, Kevin Noon. Let's address, one of the elephants in the room, and not the Chase Young elephant at this point, the next opponent, Rutgers. Maryland beat Rutgers 48-7. Ohio State beat Maryland 1,000,000-14. So what are we going to see next week when the Buckeyes travel to Piscataway?
I'm extremely excited for this game. It's just to be bluntly honest. I mean, it's hard to say what's going to happen. I mean, the line that I saw, the live line, kind of as this game was ending before we went to interviews, I think it was something around 58.5. So it's just, and I would be shocked if Ohio State does not cover that. I mean, there's no indication on either side of the ball that Rutgers would be able to stop Ohio State. I mean, I think the only reprieve for Rutgers may be that the starters may be taken out sooner than they were in this game, but that's about the only saving grace that Rutgers may have next week.
Yeah, and kind of like when some people watch NASCAR, like the crashes are the most exciting part of it. That's kind of why people are going to be tuning into this game. is because people just want to see maybe how bad this can get. I think that the best defense for Rutgers will be Ohio State's coaching staff and seeing how quickly they take out the starters, especially ahead of a big matchup with Penn State, which lost a little bit of its luster but still holds the same importance as far as the East Division goes. But, I mean, I don't even know how Rutgers is going to be able to move the ball, especially on an improved Ohio State defense when they couldn't do it in the past. So, I mean, there's not much more that can be said than what Braden's been saying for this entire season about Rutgers.
Yeah, it's going to be ugly, and I'm going to give Keaton that trip off. He'll be manning Buckeye Grove World Headquarters back here in Ohio. Braden and I and Alex Gleitman will be there at SHI Stadium or whatever they're calling it this week. Keaton kind of touched upon it. Penn State came up on the short end today in the Big Ten battle of the year until the next big battle, 31-26 to Minnesota in Minneapolis. Quarterback Sean Clifford, 23 of 43, 340 passing, only one touchdown, 3 interceptions, all costly, a couple of sacks. Now it really kind of throws, certainly that Big Ten West into disarray. I don't think it really changes the East all that much in terms of how things need to fall there. Ohio State's still sitting undefeated at this point. But a lot of interested eyes in that game, and I caught everybody, myself included, trying to catch sneaks of watching that game a little bit while this bloodbath was going on.
I think this kind of cements Minnesota as a serious contender this season. It was fair, the criticism coming into this game about kind of how their schedule had been weak and they hadn't really played any premier opponents. But they handled that, and PJ Fleck, Penn State came in and they kind of just dominated them kind of in every sense of the word. Tanner Morgan, 8 of 20 for 339 yards. You really can't get much more efficient than that. 3 touchdowns as well, and then the way they were able to shut Sean Clifford down, who has been, he's not been lights out this season by any means, but he's been a fairly consistent quarterback for Penn State. So just seeing the way they were able to shut him down and then able to contend with Penn State's defense, which had been really impressive thus far. It's just a really nice win for Minnesota, and I don't think that this is an indictment of Penn State. I think they are still a very good team, but I think with this win, we can have now seen that Minnesota is also a really good team in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I agree with Braden in saying that Penn State is still a very good football team. I think Minnesota snuck up on a lot of people, and this was kind of their first chance to show the rest of the nation what they're about, and they took advantage of the opportunity, especially at home. But I think Penn State needs to be a little bit nervous by the fact that Sean Clifford played so poorly. Doubled his interception total that he had going into this game. And then maybe Minnesota has a recipe for defending Penn State that could give Ohio State a blueprint on how to defend them better, especially with better athletes at Ohio State. They might have a better plan. And then KJ Hamler kept out of the end zone for the first time. He got a touchdown for the last 5 weeks, didn't get one today. So Minnesota was very impressive, especially having to make the stop at the end. And, really shook up the West, especially when Wisconsin was probably counting on that loss to get themselves back into the Big Ten championship hunt.
Right, and I think that one thing to remember, too, is once again it shows Penn State's struggles on the road against top-rated teams. And, of course, we know that the last time that they played here at Ohio Stadium, Penn State got off to the good start, had the fourth quarter lead, and the Buckeyes came back and won it by 1. Don't think for a second that this game is just suddenly going to become a wipeout because of what happened at Minnesota a couple weeks to go before these two teams play on the 23rd here at Ohio Stadium, so that should still be a good game. The question is, will Chase Young be part of that roster at that point? There were some reports out earlier today saying that it looked like it was going to be a 4-game suspension that would be appealed down to potentially to 2. Ohio State spokesman came out and said, look, whoa, that's, people are jumping the gun. We have no expectations at this point. So, it's going to be kind of a wait and see. According to people I'm talking to, I would expect middle of next week maybe to have an idea of what's going on. And then, of course, Ohio State would have the opportunity to appeal anything at that point. How big is the loss of Chase Young for the Buckeyes? When not for this next week in Rutgers. We've already thrown dirt on the Scarlet Knights. So that's not going to be a game. But how important is that loss?
I think it'll be huge going down the stretch. Young is, by the words of Ryan Day and many, national media people, Young is probably the best player in college football right now. So for Ohio State to lose him, while they were able to recover nicely this week, that's not something that's going to be sustainable. Ohio State has preached the depth that they have behind Young and really at every position, the depth that they have everywhere all season. But the thing with depth is it's not meant to go on long term. I think of it, this may sound bad, but kind of like a spare tire. It works good in the midterm against your Marylands and your Rutgers, but when you start getting into Penn State and Michigan in the Big Ten championship game, you're going to want Young back for that game. So while I don't think that changes the outlook for Ohio State in terms of winning the Big Ten, I think that could seriously be a factor for them come time, if they're in the playoffs. I think not having Young would be a major, major loss for them.
Yeah, and eventually Ohio State is going to be faced with a game where they're going to be in a close game down the stretch. And when you're in those kind of situations, you want leaders in your team, and you're losing one of the captains in Chase Young. You don't have that leadership. You don't have that guy to calm the group down who's been through it before. I mean, they have other guys who have experience, but from all accounts from other players, the leader of this defense is Chase Young. He's the vocal one. He's the one who's always talking to them before games. So you lose that. You lose stuff. Obviously, he's makes impact on the field. He's going to make plays, so you're losing that. But even just the intangible stuff, the leadership, you're going to lose that. And I think you would really want that, especially in games like Penn State, Michigan, and then if they make the college football playoff in the Big Ten championship game.
And I don't want to get into my own level of speculation, just, based on some reports that were out there earlier and them being kind of refuted at this point. But I tend to agree with what was being said at that point. I think it could be 3 games, 4 games. There's always something to be said about appearances. And if Chase Young only misses Maryland and Rutgers, I think a lot of people were saying, well, they need to sit there and put Chase Young and Justin Fields and some of these guys in bubble wrap and not bring them back out till Penn State anyway. So, I think that if you look at the dollar figures that have been kind of floated around out there, that these the loan was 4, it'd be kind of in the 4 game range, but with him being in good academic standing and some things along those lines, I could see it being appealed down and maybe getting a little relief for Ohio State. But, I'll ask each of you, have we seen the last game of Chase Young as a Buckeye?
I don't believe so. I think, like you said, you've heard kind of rumblings of what's happening. So I think I would be surprised if Ohio State were to make the playoffs, I would be surprised if he was not back for that, let alone the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, I agree with Braden. We'll see him again. I think there's a good chance you'll see him for the Penn State game, but worst case scenario for the Big Ten championship game. And Ohio State will still have everything on the line at that point, so you'll definitely see Chase Young again.
Last question, and it's kind of hard as we sit there and we record this while games are going on and things could be dated at that point. But Ohio State was number 1 in the first college football playoff rankings. I'm not going to ask anybody to predict where they're going to be at the end of this week. As we're recording, LSU's up 33-13 on Alabama at the half. Not will Ohio State be 1 in next week, but were you surprised that Ohio State was number 1 in the first poll?
I don't believe it was surprising at all. I mean, I think while they may not have had the resume that LSU had again with wins over Texas and Florida, I think that Ohio State through and through, I believe it was 8 games before the poll came out, that they had clearly been the most dominant team. I mean, in every facet of the ball on, offense, defense, special teams, I think they had clearly been the best executing team in college football through the first 8 games. So I think the number 1 ranking was deserved.
Yeah, it's definitely deserved. I was a little bit shocked that the committee went with Ohio State at 1, because in the past you would see them going with an LSU over an Ohio State. But I think number 1 is slotted perfectly for Ohio State, especially with how they've beaten opponents. I mean, their 2 top wins are like a combined 80-7 point differential. So Ohio State's taking care of their business. You can only handle who's in front of you. And as people like to point out the resume, Ohio State had the best strength of record of all those teams that were in contention for the number 1 spot. So Ohio State has the resume, and they're only going to be able to build upon it coming forward.
And, we'll all find out where they rank again here on a Tuesday evening. Right now, it's going to probably be hard to hold off LSU at this point, but the Buckeyes certainly will have the opportunity with Penn State and Michigan coming at the end of the regular season, and it'll be a fun ride till we get there. There's not much else we can say about a 73-14 wipeout, so we're going to call it a night. For Braden and Keaton, I'm your host, Kevin Noon. Thanks for listening.
Be sure to stay up to date with Buckeye Grove Instant Access when the news breaks or after the big game, exclusively at buckeyegrove.com or anytime on SoundCloud, iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher as part of the Unscripted Ohio Podcast Network. Hit that subscribe button so you can stay in the know and never miss a single episode.